Welcome. Oh, hang on, not yet. Can I ask a favour from all our listeners? B Squared, the company behind the Zencast, are up for an Education Today award for Best Supplier of ICT Software for our connecting steps. If you are listening to this episode before the 30th of September, can you please vote for us in the Education Today Awards by going to educationtodayawards.co.uk/vote. You'll also find the link in the show notes. Please vote for us. And I will now hand over to me to get on with the podcast. Welcome to the Zencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Zencast and the managing director of B Squared. We started this podcast 4 years ago as a way to help improve knowledge around SEND. Yes, there is lots of stuff you can go and read, but we do not have the time. Everyone working in schools needs training and support around SEND, but the funding isn't there to achieve this. And this podcast helps solve that problem. It's a great way to get that same consistent message to schools and parents. This week, my guest is Chloe Plummer from Move Europe. Move Europe work with special schools across the UK, enabling children with physical disabilities and complex needs to gain independent moving skills. And Chloe is the events and programme coordinator for the South. And she has her own personal lived experience of physical disability. And in this episode, we're discussing why movement matters and the importance of providing functional movement opportunities via education. The Zencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. You've heard me say that a few times. I normally mention our assessment software, but this time I'm talking about EverSense, our evidence and parental communication system. It's a system that feels really easy to use because it's just like using social media, but it is extremely secure. It's a safe place to share evidence of learning with parents or external professionals, and it's a great way to capture pupil voice or use it as your homeschool diary or reading diary. Visit the B Squared website to find out more about EverSense or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through EverSense and how it can help you. Now, let's get on with the podcast. On this week's show, we're discussing why movement matters and the importance of providing functional movement opportunities via education. My guest this week is Chloe Plummer from Move Europe. Move Europe is a small charity working with special schools across the UK, enabling children with physical disabilities and complex needs to gain independent movement skills through the MOVE programme. Chloe is the events and programme coordinator for the South and has her own lived experience of physical disability. Chloe combines her own personal experience and passion in her role at MOVE, ensuring individuals with physical disabilities are able to live fulfilling and independent lives. Welcome to the show, Chloe.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. I have really limited knowledge and experience around PMLD and complex needs. We have our assessment frameworks, but I don't really go into schools, so I just don't have that much experience. But I'm guessing where individuals have limited physical movement, the focus of any support is going to be around that functional movement to help them be as independent as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. Promoting that importance of functional movement is at the heart of everything we do at the MOVE programme. The MOVE programme is an activity-based framework that we obviously use in schools, as you said, designed to support children and young people. There's no kind of age limit on it, to develop functional skills of sitting, standing, walking and transferring in between, so that they've got those skills to benefit them now in the short term, but also in the long term as they kind of progress throughout childhood and into adulthood and beyond.
So I suppose it is that kind of being independent in wherever you are, not relying on someone to move around where you are living or at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all around, as I say, gaining those functional skills. You'll probably hear me say that hundreds of times throughout this podcast. But yeah, really gaining those skills that we all need for everyday life so that that child or young person can experience as much independence as possible. But most importantly for us at MOVE, experience that independence in ways that are meaningful to them and are going to really mean something to their lives and also their families' lives as well. So when we are supporting our children and young people to gain those skills, we're working on skills with them because they mean something, they serve a purpose, not because we think as professionals that's what they should be doing. We want to do it because it's going to mean something to them now and in the long-term future.
It makes sense. It's like, I remember completely segueing off. I was a football coach previously, coaching my daughter's team. And one of the things they said, oh, let's do this here. And you're literally going, why are we doing this? And they go, why do we do that? And no one knew the answer. Exactly. So why do it? If you don't know the reason and no one knows the reason, then don't do it, because it's not adding to. If you can really see, oh, I'm doing this because I'm going to use it here, you're more likely to engage and do it.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head there. I think that reason why is, key. Okay, we're supporting our children to perhaps stand in their standards, for example, but why are they standing in their standard? No one just stands there for the sake of it. You stand there to wait for a bus, or you stand to wait the queue at the shop. So for our children, they may be practicing standing so that they can go and experience similar things. Or again, another key thing for us at Move is when we are practicing those skill opportunities, as we call them, really incorporating children's motivations and their personalities and what they really like into those skill practices. So it becomes fun, and they almost don't realise that they're doing it, because are they practicing standing so that they can access the iPad or the interactive whiteboard in the classroom? So that, again, it goes back to that function. They're doing it so they can achieve something and just experience that success and independence, as we say.
And we're talking about PMLD and complex needs. And I generally, when you talk about all these things, I am thinking about those who can stand or will be able to stand. But not everyone you work with will be able to, I'm guessing.
No, absolutely. The MOVE programme has been designed to be used with children with a wide range of disabilities and kind of levels of ability. We always say our ethos can be used with any child or young person, regardless of their condition. So we have children who kind of start on the programme without any of those skills, and the programme can really support them to develop those. But on the other side of things, we have children who start on the programme and have already got the skills of perhaps sitting and standing, but perhaps just need to work on walking and perhaps those more trickier skills like up and down steps or uneven surfaces. So no two children's MOVE journeys, if you like, are the same. It's completely unique and really tailored towards them, their abilities, what they can do. We always focus on what they can do, never what they can't. So that often for our families is a really unique experience. A lot of our families, come to school where we use the programme and speak to, the class teams, therapy teams at school, whoever, and have had experience of, doctor's appointments where they've been told what their child might not achieve in the future. And of course, doctors and things have to say that for a legal, perspective, and to be realistic from their opinion, but it can sometimes lead to kind of barriers being placed on our children, sometimes unnecessarily as well. So with MOVE, one of our key values as a charity actually is all around daring to dream, and that's all around raising our expectations of our children and young people and kind of removing those barriers that can sometimes be placed on them, to really focus on what they can achieve and not what they might not be able to.
And it is really hard when a doctor says someone won't be able to do this or they can't.
Yeah.
As I can imagine as a parent, that you've been told that, so it's not, you don't want to believe it. It's kind of, you're told it. You might even believe it's fact.
Mm-hmm.
And that will kind of influence how you are and your expectations, and maybe be much more protective of your child because they cannot do these things. We're not even going to try or give them a chance. Whereas actually, when you do give people chance,
Mm-hmm.
and that motivation, for me, it's always chocolate. I'll get anywhere for chocolate. It's amazing what they can achieve. And you might find that child, when they go to the doctors and they're by maybe being assessed, there's lots of negativity around that. So they're not really trying. They're not putting the effort in because they're like, oh, this is just not going to go well. Whereas when you change that motivation of why you're doing something, and you are a team who believe and want, it can really change things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things there actually. I think with our approach at MOVE and really using that can do approach, parents and families and carers come away from what we call a MOVE assessment meeting with essentially documents that tell them what their child can do, not a blank page of what their child can't or won't. And as well, I think we do have kind of parents that we know of through schools who are nervous at first to kind of introduce their child to the programme because they've been told that they might not do this. So they are absolutely understandably protective. But when you've got the right people behind them, and we can come on to that in a bit around kind of how we work at Move. Yeah, with those motivations and the right attitude and approach, it can, achieve some amazing things.
I suppose that's actually probably one of the first barriers, is kind of breaking down with the young person and the parents that I cannot or they cannot.
Mm-hmm.
That actually, well, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's key. And again, all comes back to our kind of can-do approach, and also the way we set goals and Move as well. So obviously, as a education-based program, the program itself is based on 6 steps. I can tell you more about that at relevant points today, but the kind of second step of the program, after we've done that can-do assessment on what the child can currently do, we look at setting goals. But the way we set goals at Move kind of really sets us apart from kind of other approaches designed to support children, in that we always set goals again around that function to be able to, so that I can, so to be able to stand for 5 minutes so I can play my favourite game on the interactive whiteboard. But I think through setting goals in that way helps to really develop those kind of attitudes that you want, that I can, to be able to, so that I can. So you're really kind of instilling that way of thinking, I guess, from the very early stages of a child and their family's journey on Move, because it's not just the child on the Move programme. The children and their family are at the centre of absolutely everything we do. So right from that assessment to setting goals that are meaningful to the child and their family, what's going to make a difference to their lives when they go home from school, during the holidays like we're in now when we're recording this, that kind of thing. So yeah, really important to kind of get those messages and kind of ways of thinking right from the very early stages.
A number of years ago, I did a podcast with a lady called Nomi Gallagher, and she works for a gaming charity, adapting controllers and things like that.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them, or there's a couple now, but they're great charities.
And it was like, what is it you want? And what the parents are saying is one thing, and they asked the student, and one of them was, I want to beat my brother at Mario Kart.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, that's the motivation. Yeah. And if you have that and you go, well, yeah, we can do that. Here are maybe however many steps towards achieving that. Yeah. But if that's their goal and you can help them achieve that, then that's the motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got some like lovely examples of goals that have been set and achieved through Move. One young man, for example, at one of our current schools, he absolutely loves all things to do with transport, whether it be bus, train, boat. And what he actually really wanted to do is that he knew, as he got to the end of his time at school, the school do a leavers trip to the Isle of Wight, which involves going on the Isle of Wight ferry. And what he wanted to do was sit on the conventional chair in the Isle of Wight ferry so he could look out the window rather than being in his chair. So that was his goal, to be able to sit on a conventional seat so I can go on the Isle of Wight ferry. Meant something to him. Another one that I really like that I use when we're speaking to schools is, again, another young man. He was approaching his 18th birthday. He was kind of in the last couple of years of school. And after conversations with his family, it come to light that every Sunday, him and his dad would go down to the pub while his mum made the Sunday dinner. And what he really wanted to do was, when he was 18, he wanted to be able to stand at the bar and order his first pint rather than, again, get it in his chair. So that was his goal, to be able to stand so that he could order his first pint. And he did. On his 18th birthday, he went and stood at the bar and ordered his first pint. So again, really, really meaningful, functional, everyday activities.
And that's the thing, for us, it is an everyday activity that we completely take for granted, that we don't understand the meaning of being able to sit at that window on the ferry. I've done the Isle of Wight ferry loads of times, and I do like it. But it is that you just take things for granted that actually, and I was thinking of the ferry going, actually, if you can't sit in those seats, you end up being quite away from the window.
Yeah.
And also, yes, ordering your first drink. My daughter has just turned 18. And it's interesting watching kind of that feeling of a grown-up and what it means. And it's not about a number. It's not about this. It's standing at the bar and ordering that drink. It's little things.
Yeah.
That once you do it once, it's kind of, it's done it now. But doing it that first time is really big.
Yeah, no, some really lovely examples there, and I could probably go on all afternoon about examples of goals. But yeah, just some examples of, yeah, just I think those examples really bring to light our ethos at Move around essentially function, incorporating those motivations for the individual, whatever they might be, and yeah, just ensuring that we're providing the right opportunities to do that. Because again, I think the only final thing that kind of sets us apart and Move is that, unlike other approaches, Move isn't another therapy. So it's not something that would happen on a Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock. It's something that happens throughout the learning day and beyond, so that children and young people are given those opportunities to work on their goals and practice those skills throughout what they're already doing. So, for example, going back to our two young men who had goals around standing, they would be supported during their learning day to perhaps stand when they arrive at school to take their coat off, or stand in the playground to engage with their friends, all that kind of thing, so that it's happening throughout what's already going on. It's not creating more work for the those involved with supporting the individual or the child themselves. It's just kind of seamlessly integrated into everyday life, just as those skills are for all of us who perhaps haven't got those physical disabilities.
And I know through all our work at B Squared that when you have people coming in doing speech and language therapy, physios, if you do 1 hour a week in isolation and it's just that 1 hour, it's never really going to have impact. 'Cause you're not kind of using it throughout. You need those opportunities. And if you think of AAC, if you've got this amazing tablet which does all the, you tap the button, it speaks for you, you can communicate, and you use that for 1 hour a week, or maybe a couple of times a week, but you're not kind of starting to rely on it, always having access, you're never going to kind of adapt or change how you think about things. So yeah, it's really important that when you're doing things like this kind of working on towards these goals, and that's the thing, and these are the things we're going to do towards it, it's not happening in isolation. It needs to be happening everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That also as well brings you on nicely to some kind of research that again really founded what we do at Move when the program first started. So the program first started back in the 1980s over in the US by a special educational needs teacher over there, a lady called Linda Badawi now. She's sadly passed away, but I would definitely recommend giving her a Google. She's a fascinating lady and super, super, yeah, clever and talented in what she did. But when she was kind of developing the Move program, and the reason behind why she felt this was needed was that she found that for children and young people with kind of complex needs, PMLD, they need around 2,000 skill practices before they're able to use a skill successfully and embed that in everyday life. That isn't as clear cut as kind of creating a tick sheet of 2,000 boxes, and once you've ticked the last one off, they've got it. It's not as black and white as that, but it just gives you a rough idea of just how many repeated opportunities our children with complex needs need to be able to do that. Compared to a child without a disability, it's around 200 practices, so you can see it's quite a big jump. But she broke that down further and found that when a child is able to practice a skill, say once a week, like you were saying in that therapy session, perhaps when someone comes into school, it would actually take the child 38 years to really be able to use that skill successfully. Obviously, even when we think about our smallest, youngest children in school, starting with us maybe 4 or 5, 38 years time, they're going to be in their mid-40s, and that's not going to give them that kind of independence and functionality that we want. So again, the research went one step further and found that if you provide a child the opportunity to practice once a day, perhaps as I was saying, like when they first come into school, for example, it can take them around 5 years to really embed that skill, which is again a huge jump in the right direction. From 38 years, they're going to then be kind of preteens. But again, we need to think about in that time, children are going to be getting bigger, heavier, all the changes that go on to our bodies anyway as you get older. You need to think about how that's going to affect their independence and all things like that. So then the final stage of the research, which then kind of cemented our whole ethos around Move, around providing those multiple repeated opportunities throughout the learning day, found that when you provide the child an opportunity to practice a skill 5 times or more throughout the learning day. We don't want to be rigid and be like, 5, that's it. If you can do more, that's amazing.
It's not one of your 5 a day.
No, that's if you can do 5, that's amazing. If some days you do 3 because other things have been going on, or a bit tired, or what have you, that's fine. If some days you do 6, 7, amazing. We want to aim for around that region. The research found that a child would then be able to kind of embed that skill within a year, which is obviously amazing outcome for them to be able to really, use that skill successfully within a school year, a calendar year.
And that's really amazing research. And I think when we talk about this, you're saying 2000, it really highlights the speed difference going from 38 years down to a year. But it also highlights that that's probably the same with everyone. If you do something, so 200 times once a week, my maths is about 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you do that 5 times a week, 200 times is now down to a year.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it it comes down for everyone. It really shows that using that consistent approach, it's really exaggerated in that timescale you were talking about, but it is something that you can't just do something once.
Yeah.
But also going back to what you were kind of saying about those people standing, it really struck me that importance of pupil voice, that importance of the motivation to the person. And you might have a doctor saying, well, for them to be a successful individual, or however they want to phrase it, they need to be able to do this. And the parents, what they think is important might be being able to get a job or something like that. You ask the child or the young person, it's standing at the bar and the olive oil. It's got to be what's right for them, and that motivation. Now, if by standing at the bar, that means they can also do lots of other things, which will come to them and realize later that they can now get a job because they can stand at the bus stop or do this. Great. But you've got to go for the motivational piece, which is going to be very, very, very individual to them.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously we are completely child-centered in what we do. And, I think for me, what I really like about Move is that we are really focusing on that child's motivations and what they like, enabling them to still be a child and enjoy what they enjoy and is important to them, rather than thinking, relying on other people's opinions, which actually might not align with what they or their family necessarily want. So yeah, I think it's really nice that we're able to, like you say, capture their voice, and what if it's not possible for the individual, really capturing the voice of their family and those that know them best as well.
Definitely. So you mentioned there are, 6 stages?
Yeah, so the programme's based on 6 key steps that we obviously train schools, but importantly with Move, we train schools, so your education staff, but we also train key therapy staff as well, so physios, OTs, sometimes speech and language as well. Lots of different, essentially anyone involved in supporting that child throughout their learning day, because as we said before, Move isn't another therapy, so it's not something that happens in kind of isolation. It's something that happens throughout the learning day, so all those people involved at different points need to be aware of what the child can do now, as we said in that assessment, what their goals are, and also how they can support them to achieve that. So we're all working towards the same goals and same outcomes, rather than, it's 12 o'clock, it's time to practice this with such and such, it's now home time, now you're going to do this. Actually, we're all working together, really using a kind of multidisciplinary and often transdisciplinary model to support them, so that we're sharing the responsibility for developing children's functional development, so that it's not just based with kind of physio teams. We often see before we go into schools, kind of physical development has been kind of with the PE teacher for PE lessons, and then anything above that with the therapy team. And that's great, but it means that those multiple opportunities that we're after aren't always happening, because it's happening at those very set times. Again, as we know with physios as well, their resources often incredibly stretched, perhaps not seeing the children in school as much as they would like, as much as other people involved would like. So really, by training up education and therapy teams and bridging that gap between the two, means that responsibility is shared, but also you have consistency in the support that children are receiving, because through, again, training up as many people as possible, it means that if, life happens and people move on from jobs, the knowledge of how to support that child doesn't just sit with that one person, that then may go with that individual when they move on, which would then mean that the child is kind of maybe back to where they started because that knowledge and expertise isn't there. But if you're training up lots of different people on the same principles and the same knowledge of the child at the end of the day, you've just got that consistency, which, as we all know, leads to some fantastic outcomes as well. And again, through kind of training up lots of different people involved with supporting children, we're gaining lots of different perspectives on the child and how maybe best to support them. We know our children will do something really well at school and not at home, and vice versa, or they might do something really well for a select member of staff that they perhaps really get on well with and not others. But through involving as many people as possible, you can share those perspectives to really build up a complete picture of the child and the best way to support them going forward.
I think sensory and physical, one of what we've discussed before, is with communication interaction. That's there's a spoken language part, there's the reading, there's kind of, okay, yep, that's kind of part of the national curriculum. So it's kind of not too dissimilar. And even with mental health, that's kind of overlapping with PSHE, but kind of sensory and physical is a whole kind of different area which doesn't fit really into that education. And I guess maybe a lot of people in schools aren't confident. They kind of need that additional support to learn about how to do things, the importance of things. And even just sitting there going, basically, the more opportunities you get, the more progress we're going to see. Where you might have seen them be static for the last 3 years, it's because they're not having the opportunities. But if we change the number of opportunities, if we get that embedded, as you said, through everyone doing it, and rather than doing it the quick way, we just make sure those opportunities are happening and used when we can, that actually you'll see that progress increase.
Yeah, that's a perfect summary, really, of how we view things that move. And like you say, not doing things the quick way is, again, something that we're quite passionate about. As we said, we look to find those opportunities to practice skills in things that need to happen every day. So, for example, if a child is perhaps working on a walking skill, could they be supported to walk to the lunch hall or to walk to the toilet to, go and do whatever needs to happen there, rather than being taken quickly in their chair, for example? Could actually some more time be given to the lunch period to enable that to happen, so that it's just being seamlessly integrated into what is already happening. And I think as well what you said about kind of physical and sensory side of things in the curriculum, and it's kind of separate to everything else. Again, that's where Move can really help with that kind of thing, because actually children can practice their move skills when you're doing numeracy and literacy. Children can be supported to practice standing whilst they're perhaps, as I said before, using the interactive whiteboard, or could they be supported to practice walking to go on a story trail or something like that? It can be really incorporated into the curriculum and other areas that need to be equally kind of worked on and looked at.
So if we kind of go, I'm going to more complex, that's the bit I'm really interested in, is when you have children kind of, I'm going to use motorized wheelchairs. I'm sure there's loads of different terminology, and I'm going to go for the very simple one I at least understand. Now, I'm going to say that they probably aren't going to stand, but again, I've probably generalized this, and that's like the doctor saying, oh, if they're in this, they're not going to. But that's not always going to be a written rule.
No, absolutely. And again, at Move, as I said earlier, the programme can be used for children with a wide range of disabilities and levels of ability. And we're also seeing the programme being used increasingly with children with degenerative conditions as well. So whilst obviously the kind of assessment framework that we have has been developed to support children to gain those skills of sitting, standing, walking, it can also be used to maintain those skills that they've already got to prevent further regression. So it can kind of be used in two ways, and again, still using that ethos of providing those repeated multiple opportunities to do that throughout their day.
And I suppose I'm literally hearing what I said, and I've made a generalization based on the equipment they're using. and they might be in that motorized wheelchair because they are paralyzed from the waist down and they cannot. And so having that motor makes much sense. But it could also be down to a stamina and a strength issue, which is you're working on. It can, and I suppose for some people, they want to move out of that motorized wheelchair. And it's part of that journey for them. It's understanding where they want to get to and not deciding immediately what's possible, but
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. You mentioned that about kind of equipment as well, because again, equipment forms another huge part of the program, and understandably, and a lot of our children and young people will always use kind of equipment, supportive equipment of some kind, and that's absolutely fine. But in Move, where possible, we kind of view equipment as being used temporarily where possible. But also, if it's not possible to use it temporarily, perhaps for children, like we say, with degenerative conditions, can it be used in a way that increases their independence wherever possible? So, for example, some specialist seating might have lots of different kind of straps and supports. We look at how can we support the child safely. Absolutely, safety is key priority. We're not going to be putting anyone at risk. But how could we look at how could that chair be used in a slightly different way to kind of help them experience that increased independence? It might, for some children with kind of the most complex needs, be something as simple as loosening foot straps so they've got a little bit more freedom at their feet, or perhaps removing the headrest, not permanently, just for maybe a couple of seconds, even 30 seconds, just so they can experience that kind of gaining that head control to maybe be able to access an AAC device, like you say, an eye gaze machine. So, yeah, we do look at kind of equipment quite uniquely in that way.
it's interesting thinking about those children who are strapped. It is so much of our communication is body language.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you'll sit there and you'll lean back and you'll move
Yeah.
forward and you'll move your arms. But yeah, if you kind of are you're strapped in for safety, but you are strapped securely, then you've kind of lost that ability to kind of add to what you're saying with the body language.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always say as well, like obviously Move has been designed um to develop mobility and increase independence that way. But we see so many of our schools telling us that actually through children being on the Move program, their communication has improved, their social skills and their confidence has really had a boost. And yeah, we always say that movement is a form of communication, even if a child perhaps hasn't got, you know, verbal words to be able to say, I don't want to be in this room. If they can move themselves to the other side of the room, they can make it clear that they don't want to be in that room anymore. They don't want to take part in that activity. So, yeah.
It is, I have, it's a whole thing, I think it's called Not My Voice or something, which is where parents may say what their child wants. And because that child cannot communicate or cannot make the decisions, it's like the parent's voice is key. Whereas actually that child might have an opinion, might have a very strong preference, but is not allowed or given the opportunity or is able to share it. And if you can increase that ability and give them that confidence to be able to share that, then once you are making your own kind of preferences, that's when your own personality comes out. And that's when people can really engage with you. And that probably just snowballs.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we hear lots of lovely testimonials from our families that say like it wasn't until my child started, whatever school was using Move, that actually we really started to learn about their personality and what they like and what they dislike, and that can actually be, well, a game changer for families if they can work that out. It can, if they know what upsets them and what really motivates them, that can really help family life. So yeah, we do hear a lot of stories along those lines for sure.
And I suppose when you think about safety and danger, is safety is you've got to be safe, you've got to be 100% safe. Generally, as parents, you probably say 1,000% safe.
Yeah.
But it is not until you kind of let your child, I'm not saying be dangerous, but like maybe go out of their depth,
Mhm.
that they actually learn why they're staying within their depth.
Yeah.
Or can they actually swim and you just haven't known because you've never let them?
Exactly. And as again, that's one of our kind of, we call them a key pillar of Move, is all around opportunity, providing that opportunity, because until you try, you're not gonna know. But again, as we say, safety is absolutely key. We're not just, going to be exposing children to situations that is, dangerous or risky. We do it very, very systematically and carefully over time to ensure that everyone is kept safe. But another thing we talk about is around setting the kind of opportunities we give for children at that just manageable difficulty. And what that means is we don't want to set it too easy, give them too much support that it doesn't actually become a challenge or motivating to be able to do that, because they're like, oh, what's the point? But also we don't want it to become too hard that it becomes a negative experience that, again, they then don't want to engage in because it's the other end of the scale. So we just want to set those opportunities at that just manageable difficulty level, so they've got that level of challenge, but it's still within.
They've got to work at it.
Yeah.
Almost like, I'm going to say, it's like when you go to the gym and you feel the burn type
Yeah.
thing, and you go, you want that I've got to work to achieve it.
Yeah.
And then when I've got it, it's going to feel good because I've got it.
Yeah, and that's kind of examples that we use in our training all the time when we're speaking about this. We talk about kind of personal challenges you might set for yourself, or if you think about, again, going back to kind of equipment and how can that be used in the most independent way as possible. An example we often use is around riding a bike. You kind of start off when you're young with your stabilizers, and your parents take them off when they feel you're ready, but they might put them back on for a little bit if you're not quite ready yet and you're a little bit wobbly, and you go on from there. Another example we use, again, so relative to everyday life, is learning to drive a car. You don't just get in the car for the first time and know how to drive. You go round and round that quiet industrial state for weeks and before you even do anything else. So we kind of, in what we do, we bring it back to those kind of everyday examples to make it kind of relative to everyone, really.
Yeah, I'm having flashbacks to my driving lessons now.
Me too.
I remember my first one was go around in the circle in a little quiet little area, and he went, I'd like you to bring to the car stop now, so just push the brake pedal. I just pulled over to the left and pushed the brake pedal, and as we almost stopped, the car kind of started kangarooing and then stalled. And he went, why didn't you push the clutch down? I went, did you tell me to? And he sort of went, well, I thought you'd assume. And I was like, but yeah, I was focusing on what you told me to do and not. And it's one of the things, yes, obviously I put the clutch down, pull the clutch up and it makes sense. But in that moment, I was just like, was that me or was that you? But yeah, I do. Yeah, that learning. And it is also, you do those bits by bits.
Yeah.
That you are doing, maybe just focusing on getting into a gear and then leaving the gear and just go around in a circle and just focusing on the steering and how much steering and when do you steer, and then building each bit in until you can reverse around a corner, which apparently they don't do anymore.
No, they don't, thank goodness. But no, again, that's another thing we do within the program, and I am jumping all over the place with our steps.
Welcome to the podcast.
I haven't done them in order at all. But another thing we do is, obviously, once we've got those goals that children have set, and we know where they want to go, and we know where they are now, obviously getting from where they are now to whatever their goal is isn't as simple as, it's not going to happen overnight. There's lots of other mini goals, if you like, or mini things that need to be achieved to get to that end goal. So we look at breaking down what are the skills they need to be able to achieve first before they get to that end goal, because actually if you don't break those skills down, much like your example there with learning to drive, and you didn't know to put the clutch down or you weren't told to put the clutch down, actually it can then set our children up to not experience that success, which is not what we want. We want them to experience success and have all those skills they need to be able to use that skill successfully and functionally.
And it's interesting is I was reading the bits and it talks about transitions.
Yeah.
And sitting to standing, there's a lot goes on that you do not realise.
Yeah.
And that was one of the ones, I think someone went to me through it before, and it's like there's a tensing, there is you're sitting back, you've got to get your own weight, and you lean forward, and it's almost like you lean forward, and as that balance goes, that's when you stand up. But it's you've got to put all of that together.
Yeah, and that's what we look at in our assessment framework is made up of 72 actually motor milestones, and they're all focused on those, smaller skills of being able to kind of, like you say, transition, like pivot, move essentially while you're sitting, because it's very rare that you're sat on a seat and you just all of a sudden stand up, right? You kind of shuffle yourself to the end of the seat, don't you? And then kind of stand up from there. So yeah, the framework has been designed really to focus on all those skills that we often take for granted and you don't think about until you actually kind of sit down with an approach like this and think, wow, actually, yeah, there is a lot involved in this.
And it's watching your children, and it's so fun when you have those videos when you see a child wanting to sit down and they're just about walking, they see a seat, and they kind of walk backwards towards it, go completely off and sit down where they think the chairs are and collapse. Or you have the children who go, how do I sit on this chair? And they kind of pick the chair up and put it against their bum and then sit down. And things like that. You're literally going, actually, yeah, it's not just I'm sitting down.
Yeah.
It's so much more to it. But you just, once you go past that stage, you forget.
Yeah.
And until you either have your own children and you're watching them kind of trial and error it, you slowly pick up how many steps are involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And that example you gave, I've got a little niece and she's absolutely at that stage. It's so funny and cute to watch her. But that kind of describes a typically developing child, and they kind of, you keep them safe, but they're able to kind of problem solve, if you like, for themselves. But for our children with physical disabilities, complex needs, they perhaps need much more support from, adults around them to do that. So again, that's what kind of Move does, provides that kind of extra support and that framework really to develop those skills that haven't been developed kind of spontaneously, if you like, for our children.
Now, I can never remember which one's which. I'm going to use vestibular and proprioception. That one is like where you are and your feeling and your balance type things. So those, if you're struggling with those, then they're part of the key. That's when you know when you that balance and where you are and what your body's doing. So if children are struggling with those, then you kind of having to teach them, even if it's not saying it, kind of teach them how it should be and kind of putting them in those positions so they start to feel what it's like. It's not just the physical doing it, it's helping them sense and feel when these things are happening and how to respond.
Absolutely. And that's why the program, as you said at the beginning, kind of focuses on those skills of sitting, standing, walking, but our assessment framework starts at sitting and then kind of goes through to walking, because actually to be able to do those walking skills, you need to be able to have done quite a lot of skills beforehand related to standing and sitting. So yeah, that's why it's kind of worked through in that quite methodical way, really, to be honest. And again, going back to kind of equipment, but also the opportunities, doing that, as we said earlier, with kind of making those small adjustments to equipment where it's safe to do so, provides children with those opportunities to just feel what that feels like to start with without that support there. So yeah, so that's a good point as well.
Interesting. So coming to the end of the podcast, anything else we haven't mentioned that's kind of really key when we're looking about opportunities and developing these functional skills?
Oh, I don't think so. I think we covered it all, which was a really nice chat. I think as I've said before, kind of central to everything we do at Move is just really ensuring that function for our children and young people so that they can go on to, live as independent lives as possible, happy, healthy and fulfilled lives, and kind of, just raising those expectations so that they can show the world the amazing abilities they do have. I think, especially from my own experience as well, and definitely through all my experience with Move now, our children often just need those kind of teams around them to have that belief in them, to provide them with that platform to be able to show the world what they can do. And that's exactly what we do here at Move.
I'm going to really simplify it down to they need to want something.
Yeah.
You cannot dismiss that want, however silly you think it is, because that's important to them. And if you dismiss it, standing at the bar, and you can really get it. And the whole thing, I'm literally going, I completely get that. So it's the having that want, having that desire.
Yeah.
Having people around you who believe you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And having lots of opportunities to work towards it. And as you said, not in isolation, but as much throughout the day at school and even at home, hopefully, is having those opportunities to work towards it so that, and maybe having those reflections of, it might only be a small step, but maybe we have made another step towards achieving that goal over the last 3 months and maybe reflecting back. But it's that constant small effort towards their goal, which is really important to them.
Yeah, no, that's a lovely summary as well. And I think with the progress and equally with the goals and the wants, as you say, it might seem small to, your average passerby, but actually to that child and their family, that progress can be huge, and that what that goal means can be, well, life changing often. Yeah, I think that's a really, really nice summary.
Excellent. Thank you for coming on the show
Well,
today.
thank you very much for having me. We appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, it's been really good. You've given me some links to find out more about Move Europe and ways to contact them in the show notes. So they are, as always, wherever you listen to the podcast or on the website. There's also a conference coming up.
Yes, we do. So obviously we have kind of lots of different support we provide to our schools using Move. I just said earlier, but we currently use Move. Well, there's around 160 settings across the UK using Move in all pockets of the country. So as far up as Scotland, right the way down to kind of southwest coast kind of thing. And as one of our kind of support channels, if you like, for schools, is an annual conference that we host every November time, so pretty busy at the moment. Getting that all in place. But yeah, it's just a great day, really designed to, obviously it's designed around Move, but it's just a really great day for kind of professionals involved within the SEN community, CPD opportunities, guest speakers, loads of things going on, exhibitors. So yeah, if anyone's interested, we'd love to see them there.
And you'll find a link, as I said, in the show notes to find out all about that. So thank you for listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed already, click on that subscribe button. You can follow us on various social medias. On Twitter, I'm still not calling it X, at The Sencast. On Facebook, The Sencast. On Instagram, The Sencast. And you'll even find us on TikTok now at The Sencast. And if you're looking for a simple, secure way to capture and share evidence of learning, or a way to capture pupil voice, a way to celebrate those small achievements, or a simple, safe way to communicate with parents, you need to have a look at Eversense. Eversense is our evidence system that does so much more to help boost parental engagement. To find out more about Eversense, visit the B Squared website, where you can also find about our online training, read our blog, watch our webinars, and so much more. And you'll find a link to the website and to book a meeting with me so I can take you through Eversense or answer any questions you have in the show notes. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Sencast. It's goodbye from me.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.